Great. Good evening once more again. For those who just joined us, we're going to discuss our first. This is actually our first lesson, so we're going to discuss what I've planned us for us to discuss tonight. I hope you can hear me. If you cannot hear me, just give me a sign that you cannot hear me. If you can hear me as well as just give me a sign that you can hear me as well, so that I can be able to continue. So this lesson is going to be recorded and it's going to be uploaded. And my apologies for not uploading the first meeting that we had because I had some technical issues. The sound was very low. It was really very difficult for one to hear. I don't know what happened that day, but I hope this is going to be okay and the sound is going to be fine, so I can be able to upload it. So good evening. Can you hear me? Anybody? Can you hear me? Oh, okay, great. You can hear. All right. You can just unmute yourselves and just talk, or you can be able to write in the chat. So, let me just start sharing my screen so that uh, we'll discuss what I've prepared for us tonight. So, again, just give me feedback that you can see what is on my screen. I just want feedback that you can see what is on my screen.
Yes, we can see what is on your screen,
All
sir.
right. Thank you very much. Good. Um, what I've prepared for us tonight. If you have your course outline, because the course outline is a very important document that we're going to use, and if you go in there, I was just really just comparing the content that is on the LMSs and the one that is on the course outline. There are some differences, and then that is because the course designed the curriculum was reviewed, and we have the new course outline, not the same as last year, so we are going to be updating the content on the LMS to suit the course outline for this year. So just be patient with me because we have a new course outline. It's not the same as last year, and I'm going to be keeping updating the content week by week. So just bear with me because I'm also doing it with other modules as well. So what we're going to discuss tonight, if you go to a course outline that is actually just that is displayed here, is we are just going to focus on the first part of the course outline. So number one, we're just going to understanding the concepts and the importance in education. So we're going to focus on, or we're going to discuss measurement, we're going to discuss assessment, and moderation and evaluation. So that is our discussion. That is the center of our discussion tonight. So we're going to our discussions and our lessons are going to be guided by the course outline, not necessarily everything that is on the LMS. Like I said, I'm going to be updating everything that is on the LMS to actually just match what is on the course outline because the curriculum has been reviewed and what was there last year is not the same as this year because of the new course outline. So, with that qualification in mind, I'm just going to start sharing my screen. For us to discuss what I've prepared for us tonight. And if you have questions, and you can just be able to type them in the chat or just keep them. And I'll be pausing. I'll be pausing the presentation so that you can be able to ask your questions, and I'll be coming to the chats, and then I'll be able to for us to engage and answer your questions, and as well as others can be able to come in and bring their inputs. It's just not the answers should just be coming from me, but anybody can come in and be able to give the understanding or their perspective of the concept. So let's start. Let me just not really waste much time here because I've another meeting to attend to after this. All right. I'm just going to share. Let me just hold on. Don't want to put it on my screen. Okay, good. So I just want to make sure that this is the right course and everybody is in the right learning environment. So this is for postgraduate diploma in education, and is assessment and evaluation. So this is the code of the subject, and this is what we're going to discuss. And our discussion for tonight is like I said earlier, we're just going to discuss measurement, assessment, evaluation, and moderation. So we're going to discuss those concepts it is required by the course outline, and as well as their importance in education. Are they important in education? So, uh, so these are the concepts that we need to discuss. The understanding by the end of this presentation, I assume all of us that are in this meeting will be able to have a certain understanding of these concepts, and as well as their importance in education. Are they important? Why do we do them? Why do we carry out measurements or assessments, moderations, and as well as evaluation? So this is the learning outcome of the presentation, if you will. So let's just start with measurement. What is really measurement? When you're talking about measurement generally in education also, or in a classroom, we're referring to the process of obtaining a numerical description of the degree of an individual possesses. We are quantifying something with a numerical concept to say, for example, how much is and how much is this, or how much does an says, for example, if one got an A, how much does that person get? How do you quantify that letter, for example? So, or how long is this thing? So we are quantifying up, giving a numerical description to a certain object. So for example, in assessment, you are quantifying how much does the learner learn, for example. So how will you quantify that the students have learned or the learners have learned? You give a test, and then maybe you mark that test, and then be able to now to say, okay, now this learner has obtained 8 out of 10. Now you are quantifying it. You are measuring the learning of the learner. So that is measuring. That is what we're referring to as measurement in education or in our classrooms. So it also refers to it's also a process by which the attributes or the dimensions of a physical object is determined. For example, like I said, how do you know how tall somebody is? How do you know what is the volume of something in the for example in the bucket or in whatever? So that is what we call measurement. When you're quantifying or giving a quantity of a numerical quantity or an attribute of a certain thing. So that is what we call, when you said that is what we call measurement in education or in assessment. So you're giving a numerical description of a certain object, or of a certain concept that you want to. For example, you want to measure the intelligence of the learner. You give them a test, and then you can be able to measure that to say, okay, those that have scored 8 out of 10, those that have scored 5 out of 10 are at this level. So let's now continue with what is it? Is it important? Is measurement important in education? I've alluded earlier that sorry, let me just admit those ones are coming in. Good. Then we continue. Like I said, is assessment really? I mean, sorry, not assessment. Is measurement really important in education? For example, so it helps discover the specific weak points of an individual or class, and thus gives an opportunity to the teacher as well as to the people to remove these defects. Like I was explaining, to say, okay, example, when you're measuring the learning of the learning, how much the learners have learned, then you can be able to discover the weak points to say, okay, majority of my learners really did not score much in this question or this point. So you, as a teacher, you're identifying the weak points, and then it gives you an opportunity now as a teacher to be able to say, okay, I need to reteach this lesson, or I need to read to focus, and my reteaching is going to focus on this area, because my measurements, the way I measured the understanding of the learners with this test or with this assignment or with this activity, tells me that at least they are struggling at this point. It is also important because it's a stimulation to work hard. Because in that sense, that you providing feedback to say, okay, now you got 5 out of 10 in this test, for example. You are stimulating the learner. You are promoting hard work. You are encouraging them to work hard. You are telling me, you need to pull up your socks, you need to work hard. And that is the result of measurement. That's why measurement is very, very important in education as well. The third one is unifying the standards attained by students in a different institution. For example, measurement allows to unify, to say, okay, everybody that gets an A is only those ones that got 80 to 100. You are bringing uniformity to say A is only allocated to those ones that have got 80 to 100. So there's uniformity there, so that at least you can be measurements allow us in education to have uniformity to say, okay, this is the standard, and everybody should be able to I mean, when you're accepting somebody, to say that somebody has passed or failed is according to a given standard that you have set up. And measurement also facilitates the work of grouping individuals. For example, you have learners in your class, and how do you group them? If you want to group them according to their capabilities, or going to different types of grouping, to say, okay, no, those that are struggling in mathematics, I'm going to group them here. It's because of measurement. You have given them something, and then you measure their learning, and you want now to help them according to the groups that you want them to according to the standards and things that you want them to achieve. It also helps with measuring the abilities and the level of attainment of the students. Like I said, how do you measure that? How do you know that the students really know how to write, or how do you know that they know how to read? So those are the things that you do. You give them something, and then you measure it, you quantify to say, okay, if the learners have got 8 out of 10 in writing, then you say, okay, now at least they are able to do this, or they are not able to do this. That is that is measurement, and its importance in education. We're moving on to assessment. Assessment. So, what is really assessment? One can it has different you can define it in different ways, but it is really just a research. Can be defined as a research that a teacher does in his or her classroom, to say, okay, before I teach, let me ask, do these learners know what I'm going to teach? For example, that is what is called diagnostic assessment. You ask questions before you start teaching. So you're doing research. You say, okay, now do they know how to add? For example, or you give a little activity and say, okay, now add this for me before we start a lesson. Then you are doing a research, so that you'll be able to know, where are my students in this in this area. That is also assessment. It can also be assessment. It can also be feedback from the students to the teacher about students learning. You have taught something, and then now you want to know if the students have learned. How are you going to know if the students have learned? Through the process of assessment, now giving them activity or asking them questions. So that is what we can also be able to, that can also be able to be defined as assessment. Or one can also be able to say it's a process by which information is obtained related to a certain to some known object or goal. Is my goal achieved? For example, by the end of this, for example, our objective for this presentation or lesson, by the end of this presentation, student be able to understand what is assessment, and how important is assessment in education. Is that how am I going to know that the students have attained this information, or the goal is achieved? It's through measurements. It's through assessment, where you give certain tasks, and or ask questions at the end of the presentation, and then students be able to answer those questions, and then I can be able to know, okay, now the goal has been achieved, or the goal has not been achieved. Um, is assessment important in education in general? Yes, it's very, very important. Assessment is very important because, like I said, it measures learning. It tells you that learning has taken place or not, because I cannot just come here, or you cannot just go to a classroom and you teach and leave. How will you know that learning has taken place? It's through assessment. You assess, and you know that, okay, now learners have learning has taken place, or no learning has not. No learning has taken place. I need to reteach, or I need to come up with a new strategy to teach. So it also helps you to know the level of understanding of the learners on a certain topic. The level of understanding for example, this topic, importance of assessment, or what is measurement. How will you know that the level of the learners? It's through assessment. You give now the task, and then the learners can be able now to answer those questions, and then you measure the level of their understanding through now, like I alluded earlier, through measurement. So you allocate marks according to the level to the abilities of achieving that objective, and then you can be able to say, no, okay, now my students, majority of them got 80%. So at least their level of understanding of this topic is very high, or they perform very poor. Their level of understanding is very low. So assessment also informs the planning of the teacher. As a teacher, when you assess and then you get feedback, for example, when you're given an activity or given a task or an examination, and then you ask, then you mark those, you mark your assignments, you mark the test, you can be able to get now, I get feedback that, so okay, now I need to plan. My planning is going to really focus on this because I, through assessment, I've realized that my students do not understand this. So my planning, I need to reteach this lesson. I need to come up with new strategies, or I need to give new activities. So your planning and preparation for the next topic or the next lesson is going to be informed by assessment, by the activities that you gave. And it also informs students about their learning, as well as assessment informs the learners where they are in their own learning. Because obviously, when you are giving tests, when you're giving assignments, when you're asking questions in the classroom, it obviously, it then you to tell the learners, that's okay, I've scored 100% in this test, so I, my learning is really is progressing, I'm progressing in these subjects, my learning is really going well, because at least you are giving them feedback to say, no, after you have written this test, this is your results, and the students can be able to tell, okay, now my learning is really progressing well, and it also informs the parents about the students progress at school as well, and as well it also informs the teacher, how are the learners progressing as well. So it also informs that very a lot of importance of assessment, if you can just think outside the box. So these are some of the things that you can be able to, you can be able to say that these are the importance of assessment, but this should not limit you, this point should not really limit you when you're thinking outside what is the importance of assessment. um, then we move to moderation. When you're talking about moderation, what is really moderation in education or in assessment? One can define it as a dialogue between the students and the teachers or the professionals to make the judgment about the students or the pupils' understanding, if they know and be able to, and also they can be able to do what is required, and they also be able to demonstrate the capabilities to show that they are able to ask to apply the knowledge that they've learned from them from the subject. And this definition of moderation is looking at the student's perspective to say, okay, the students have learned. I mean, they've written examination, have written a test, and then the teacher probably have marked, and then now this requires to be moderated to say, okay, mathematics is going to be moderated by Mr. Hu, and Mr. Hu is going to get a sample of those answer scripts, and then we'll see that to say, okay, according to the marking of the teacher, or if it was peer review, if or it was peer marking, for example, students are marking their partners or their fellow students or their fellow learners' books. You as a teacher needs to moderate to say, okay, this what the students have marked is, does it really display an understanding, or you are going to make an adjustment, does it really display an understanding of that they know, the students knows what is required, have achieved the objective of what is required. And moderation, on the other hand, can also be able to say, can be defined on the criteria that it's when a moderator establish an or moderates an examination to make sure that this examination or this test that's going to be given to the students is fair, is valid, and is consistent and is reliable. It's based on what is really the students are required to learn, and what is really and the level of at the level of the students. That's why moderation in moderating of examination of tests happens, is to look at the course outline. For example, if Mr. George is going to set an examination for assessment, a moderator would then look at the course outline to say, okay, that's is Mr. George's examinations level of asking questions, level of questioning, and as well as the content of the examination. Does it really ask what is in the course outline, or is it asking outside the course outline? That's the purpose of of moderation, to say, is this examination fair and valid? If the examination asks what is in the course outline, and and then that one can say, really, this examination is fair because it's asking what really students are supposed to know. And the level of asking of the questions is the levels of questions just say state, name, list at the postgraduate level. Then that examination is not valid. The moderator would then be say, no, Mr. George, your level of questioning is not really asking the students to think critically, or they are at their level, because they need to apply the knowledge that you have that they've learned, and then they cannot apply it if you are just asking these simple questions of name, list. You need to ask those questions of discuss, explain, compare, evaluate, so that at least the students can be able to apply the knowledge. So is moderation then important in education? Like I've alluded to, that, like the definition is already explaining, to say it is really just it's very important as well, because it ensures the quality of the assessment. Moderation ensure the quality of the assessment. Is the assessment that is given to the students of quality, or they are given assessment a poor quality assessment? They're given an examination that is of pure quality, is not asking what is supposed to be asking, is not asking what is in the course outline, or is asking too difficult questions, or is asking just one level of questioning where everything is just compare, compare, compare. There's no different levels of where students need to at least maybe discuss and then be able to evaluate, explain and discuss and define at some point. So the quality of assessment is can be reviewed or determined through moderation. And moderation also ensure the qualities of learners' work. Like I was explaining earlier, to say the moderation of the learner's work, to say if, for example, you are marking the learner's work, or there was a peer marking that was taking place in your classroom, you as a teacher needs to moderate, to say, okay, Samuel has given Esther 8 out of 10. That's this is really is Esther's work. That's really does it really display the amount of mark and the marks that are given? So you are moderating to say, no, this quality of work, or this work is really of quality and they deserve 8 out of 10, or no, this is pure quality. Poor quality work, this is a 5 out of 10. So that is another way of moderating, and the importance of it. And it also ensure, like I alluded earlier in the definition, ensure fairness and validity of the assessment, and as well as it strengthen the assessment practices. So the assessment practice is really determined by moderation. So at least when somebody is setting an assessment, the moment one knows that it's going to be moderated, one will set the assignment that is of quality, and then these practices now makes assessment even more stronger in education, so that and gives it quality. Because sometimes you will hear that, no, this paper was really of poor quality, because maybe there was pure moderation that was done. The moderator did not really moderate as he or she is supposed to, or maybe the paper or the test or the assessment was not really moderated. So that is really the importance of moderation. Let me just pause here and get to the chats. Okay, there's really nothing on the chats. Let me just go back to the presentation and we can come back to some discussion as well before I finish, because we're just looking at these terms and also be able to discuss their importance as well. And then that is really that's really it. That it was really short. It was a short presentation. Let me just stop sharing. Because it was really like I was let me just share again, so I can be able to inform those one that just came earlier, to say our focus for tonight, it's just really to at the beginning of the course, because this is our first meeting, and I want us to be able to discuss the course outline. What is we are going to we are going to discuss, or our live meetings are going to be influenced by the course outline. And what we discussed tonight is just what is in number one in the course outline, which is understanding the concepts of and the importance in education, understanding what is measurement, what is assessment, what is moderation, and what is evaluation in education, and the importance of them. And then the next presentation would then cover other parts of, for example, that is going to be understanding of assessment policies in education, and we can cover maybe 2 and 3, because this is a semester course, and it's really if you can be able to see the course outline is a little bit longer as well. So, and like I said earlier, Let me just go to my LMS. Like I said earlier, some of the notes that are under that are on LMS, for example, under week 1 and week 2, are not really matching with some parts of the of the new course outline, because this content was for last year and it was not really updated. And like I said, I'm going to be updating as we go, and then according to the course outline, because the content that is on the LMS was uploaded and was divided according to the last year's course outline, and the curriculum has just been reviewed this year at the beginning. So I'm still constantly updating and bringing new content just to bring it to attention. And however, the notes, like these notes, I'm going to be uploading them onto the week 1. I'm going to upload them onto here, so it's going to be there's going to be a heading that is going to appear, that is notes for week 1, and it's going to be an assessment, evaluation, moderation, and uh, and evaluation, I think. Or is it not? There's no evaluation. um did I miss evaluation? I think assessment, evaluation. Oh, I think I missed evaluation. I don't know why I did not put evaluation here. um just give me a minute, but just stop sharing. I just okay, before I just update my presentation to include evaluation. We still have 30 minutes. I don't know how I missed evaluation. I think I just missed it from putting it to the presentation, but I have it in my notes. Let's just have some questions. If you have some questions that you have about about these topics or concept that we have discussed, while I'm just going to we are going to go further to evaluation, while I'm just going to update to put evaluation, so that we won't omit it and leave it behind without discussing it. Any question, you just can type in the chat, or you can just raise your hand, and we can be able to tackle them and discuss them. You did not hear anything? There's nothing? There's no question? Is everything fine? I'm starting to wonder now. Nobody's saying anything. You can just type in the chats to say, maybe you have a question. You just type in the chats, and then I can be able to answer a question, or your colleagues can come in, or you can just raise your hand to unmute yourself and then say something. Otherwise, let me just be able to update. Go to my notes and be able to update as evaluation. I don't know how I missed that. I don't know how I missed putting evaluation in my notes, but just put your questions under the chats, and then we can be able to I can be able to answer them. So I'm just updating. Just looking at my notes. Okay, I think it's going to take time. Explanations were quite clear, so there is no question from my side. Okay, good. Okay, let me just start sharing. Oh, sorry. Let me just start sharing again. I'm going to, my apologies, I'm going to update the presentation a little bit after the lesson, and then I'll share the presentation, the PowerPoint presentation on the group, on the WhatsApp group, as well as on the LMS. So I'll share the notes, the presentation on the group, and as well as on the LMS. However, I'm just going to present evaluation on in the notes, in the Microsoft notes, Microsoft Word notes that I've prepared, because I was preparing them in the Microsoft Word before I put them in the PowerPoint. So we're just going to discuss about what is evaluation here, and then we can I will then update it on the PowerPoint presentation. My apologies, I don't know how I missed that. So when you're talking really about evaluation and assessment, aren't really because if you can look at these terms, they're a little bit closer to each other, because you can't really, when you say for example assessment, you can assess without doing some measurement in it. You can make some do assessment without doing some moderation in it, and also and as well as, like, for example, so these terms sort of work hand in hand. You can do one and maybe neglect the other. So when you're coming to evaluation, one can define evaluation as a process that is designed to provide information that will help us make judgments about a given situation. For example, when you're evaluating, for example, now there's evaluation of you are evaluating your lesson, to say, okay, now you're going to have an evaluation sheet to say, okay, how was my lesson, how are you going to, for example, I say, okay, no, the students were participating, or it's a tick thing, that type of thing, because the students were participating, okay, maybe they understand what the discussion was. They were answering all the questions, and then maybe they did well in the test, on in the activity. So you are providing, you are sort of judging a situation, or you are judging your lesson, you are judging your presentation according to a certain criteria that you've used. So evaluation requires information about the situation in question. For example, it requires to say, okay, we are going to evaluate the performance of the students in this test, and then you have evaluations. Okay, now all of them, they can be able to explain. Okay, they are all able to discuss. Okay, and they are all able to give examples. Okay, but they cannot, for example, if it's mathematics, they are all able to add and multiply, but majority of them, they cannot really be able to add. I mean, to for example, to divide. Division is really a problem, and maybe my teaching. My teaching or division, or my strategy, the strategy that I used in division, it, maybe it was not really quite helpful for the students. So I need maybe to reteach this. So evaluation really just here you are evaluating. You're saying the process will lead information regarding to the worthiness. Was it worthy? To the appropriateness, to the goodness, to the validity, and to the legality of that process that you are evaluating. So you have a process in hand, or you have a situation in hand, and then you want to evaluate it. So or you can be able to evaluate and assess a certain situation. So, okay, for example, okay, students, this is these are the evaluation forms. Evaluate your teacher's teaching process, or your teaching strategies, and the students will say, okay, now uh, the teachers presented the introduction was there. Okay, the introduction was interesting. The teachers asked questions. So you are sort of judging the situation. So evaluation has mostly has to do with judgment, and really just giving more information, or getting more information about the situation that you want to. And then, is it really important in assessment or in education? As evaluation is also important, because it measures how well the students have learned against a certain standard. I think standard was just wrong spelled here. How well the students have learned against the certain standard, and I want you to address to draw attention against a certain standard. Evaluation, you have a certain standard to say, okay, no, I'm giving this activity, and at least this is the standard that I want the students. I'm going to judge the students. Performance according to this standard, and to say, okay, now according to the criteria that I've put in, or I've come up with, the performance of the students against these standards is well, or they need to improve. So you are sort of measuring the students performing against that standard that you want to evaluate. And so the evaluation requires more information on what are we going to evaluate. We're going to evaluate, are we going to focus on the performance? Are we going to focus on the process? Are we going to focus on the teaching alone? And it is also very important, because it also shows what was learned in an easy manner, or what was challenging in the learning process. For example, the students are going, or you as the students are going to evaluate to say, okay, now this strategies, or this concept, we learned it. It was easy. We learned it. It was really uh, presented in a manner that it can be easily understood, or it was really challenging. Um, and evaluation also gives as to why certain objects are mastered. It gives an understanding of why something is mastered, or why something is understood, or why something is not understood, because you have an evaluation form, or you have something that you are evaluating to. Okay, this is for example, at the evaluation form, to say, okay, why did for example, you're giving the students to say, okay, why did the students perform low or poor in this? You are evaluating, maybe the strategies, the teaching strategies are not really they were not really effective. I need to employ new ones, or maybe the learning is, it was, I mean, the concept was mastered because the teaching strategies were really of quality, or and the learners have a clear understanding what is happening or what is taking place. It also improves the teacher's teaching evaluation, as well, like assessment or in other measurement. It improves your teaching, because if you're given students to evaluate your teaching, or your colleagues to evaluate your teaching, or your supervisor comes in to say, okay, now there's a class visit, the supervisor is coming to evaluate your teaching, and then gives you feedback. Has Your supervisor has a certain criteria that is he or she is evaluating your teaching strategies, and so, okay, and then after, the teacher and the supervisor can be able to say, okay, no, this is your maybe your introduction was not really up to standard, you need to employ new strategies, and so forth. So it improves, as well as evaluation also improves the teacher's teaching as well, and it also determines the effectiveness of the teaching strategies, or the effectiveness of engaging your students as well, or your learners. And evaluation also motivates students to learn more, because like in assessment, you when you have we have evaluated the learner's learning, you would then be able to say, okay, now the students, the moment you give this the feedback to the learners, okay, this is, I was doing evaluation on your learning or on your test, and then this is the feedback, and then they can be able to say, okay, no, we need to pull up our socks, or we need to work hard, or we are doing great, and then we can continue. And the evaluation, as well as identify the problems in learning, to say, okay, what is the problem, what is happening, what is the challenge in my teaching, or what is the challenge in the learners learning, according to the standards and the objectives, I mean, and the goals that the learners want to achieve. So so that is really evaluation, or all in all. And then they if you look, let's just stop sharing. If you look at them closely with evaluation and assessment, there is some interlinkment, if you will, that sort of close. Is this if you can be able to give a differentiation, evaluation has to do with more. The focus is more on judgment. You are looking at you have a certain standard, and it's like a tick of boxing, sort of like you have a box. You have certain boxes. Okay, introduction was done. Uh, uh, Assignment was given, for example, or activity was given. So you are ticking all those things. And while assessment, you are sort of giving to see if has learning take place, and if learning has taken place or it has not taken place, what should I do to improve, to help the learners learn. So assessment focuses more on measuring the learning, if it's taken place, and then if it's not taken place, what are the strategies that you're going to use as a teacher to make sure that learning has really taken place. And so assessment focuses more on making sure that learning is really taking place, enhancing learning. That's not there's a judgment and evaluation type of in assessment, if you will, but then the focus really is just not on evaluating and then looking and judging the works, looking at the specific to say, okay, now the evaluation just looking at the specific to the teaching strategies, but assessment looks all. Assessments look at the progress of the students, so that then would then to say, okay, the progress of the students also then gives the teacher the feedback to say, no, learning has taken place, or learning has not taken place, and then it can also be able to lead to evaluation. Assessment then lead to evaluation to say, okay, no, my students, majority of them just scored 5 out of 10. I need to evaluate, or I need to give the students an evaluation, or I need to give them an opportunity to evaluate my work or my teaching strategies, and then give me feedback to say, no, say or miss, your teaching strategies are sort of we don't hear, or you speak fast, or the examples that you give are not relevant, and so forth. So that is evaluation. Like I said, my apologies, I did not include it in the presentation, but I'm going to put it in the PowerPoint before I share it with you. Again, if there's then we can, I've stopped sharing. again, it's an opportunity for us to ask questions if there's question, and if there's no question, I think that is what I've prepared for us tonight. Just to repeat myself, to say we're going to our presentation are going to be determined by how the course outline is outlined. I mean, it's written, because we have a new course outline, and that course outline is the one that is appearing on your LMS. It's the same course outline, so just download it, have it, and then when you are going to as you are going to study, for example, for tests, because as I've looked at this, course does not have an assessment. I mean, examination. Sorry, it has assessments, but it does not have have an examination. But we're going to have some tests and some projects. You can be able to look at our course outline to guide you. But again, it's just a chance for questions, if there are questions. No questions. Everything is fine. Hello, in the house. Am I speaking to myself? No questions. Okay, good. No questions. Okay, right. If no questions, then that is all I've prepared for us tonight. The assignment, regarding if you have questions on the assignment is not. I did not start with. This one is joining us. Well, we're done. I'm not sure if she or he's the one that left. The assignment is not yet marked. I did not start with your group. I've 4 groups to mark the assignments, and I do not start with marking your assignments. However, like I said earlier, I'm going to be keeping updating the notes according to the new course outline, because the LMS the was the notes and that are on the LMS was presented according to the old course outline. However, as a facilitator, I have some auditing powers. I'm going to edit where I have some auditing powers to edit the content according to the new course outline. And if there's no question, thank you very much for joining. That is all I've prepared for tonight. Thank you very much. If no question, then we can be able to end the meeting, and I'm just going to end the recording as well. Oh, sorry. It's going to end.